I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible because I think the patch notes that we have for the update 10.10 are quite possibly the most game-breaking, ridiculous updates that we have had announced in quite some time. So I'm going to delve into this here and give you my thoughts on this, and I would like to hear everybody's opinion, of course, down in the comments there below. Make sure to leave a subscription on the channel if you like the raid content and want to see more of it. So let's go ahead, hop in. Champion Chase event. There's going to be a new legendary champion available for free during a dedicated chase event. So this is essentially going to be a 14-day login period. Same thing that we've seen with like Loki and other login champions like that. It'll work the same. So you log in 7 times, claim the champion. More logins give you additional rewards and unlock the second phase, which is where you can get the soul all the way up to level 5, which is pretty cool. We have the event dungeon coming back. So the event dungeon is going to open its gates once more, meaning that we can go ahead and farm more pinpoint accessories and gear, which is going to be fantastic. I didn't get a chance to spend a whole lot of energy in the dungeon before, especially not at level 25, so I'm going to be focused on that this time, which will be pretty cool. We're going to have a new boss coming in there and everything like that too, so some pretty exciting stuff. That's going to be the event dungeon there. And then we have the market rework, and let me tell you what happened here essentially. So an executive of Plarium was pretty bored during one of their business meetings, and they decided to download Watcher of Realms. They opened up Watcher of Realms, they played through the tutorial, and then they opened up the shop in-game, specifically the in-game market. They looked at it and they seen the fact that there's basically every single market in the game all just condensed into one nice place. You can get good gear rather there, even if you're a late game player. You can get shards there, all those sorts of things. And they said, you know what? I like how the market looks in your game. Let's get our devs to take that almost exactly how it is, at least as it sounds. This is basically just a straight up clone of what's been done with the Watcher of Realms market. So the market in your bastion will become a hub where all the traders across various game modes can gather. So access by tapping on the regular building. You'll see tabs for the market itself: Token Trader, Clan Shop, Bazaar, Soul Merchant, and Mystic Market available within. Now this is a very nice update. It means that we're not going to have to scroll through, 30 different markets to try and spend our, 75 different types of currency that we have in the game at this point. So I'm all for this change. I'm certainly not complaining about it, but it does seem a little bit inspired, to say the least. And on top of that, there's a few more changes. So first of all, we're going to be able to get rank 6 gear in it, which is absolutely fantastic. And the reason for that being, rank 6 gear is end game gear, right? So there's no, rank 7 gear, right? And it's right now, currently, you can only get 3-star and I think maybe some 4-star gear in the market. It's absolutely terrible. You're not using it if you're past the first, 3 months of your account. Maybe even that's a little bit much, right? So being able to get 6-star gear is going to be absolutely fantastic. And you can also see the stats on the gear that are inside the market. So right now you can see what the substats are, the primary stats, all that sort of stuff. So you're essentially going to be able to pick and choose and get yourself some very good pieces. And you'll also be able to see the gear sets for it, of course, right? Which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Second, some of the existing sets that you're used to obtaining in the dungeons will become available in the market. This is going to be fantastic. I'm assuming they're meaning things like Savage and Speed sets and those sorts of things, because right now we have basically just the very basic sets that you'd be able to farm from the campaign, which is a little bit disappointing. Third, it'll start featuring epic and legendary gear more often, and the more you progress, the better artifacts you'll get access to. At some point, you may even stop receiving common and uncommon gear among the market offers. So I'm assuming that's just going to be the case. Now, I would also assume that there's going to be a 95% chance that it's going to be rare gear, and then there's going to be a 3% chance, maybe even a 4.5% chance that it's epic, and then a 0.5% chance that it's legendary, right? So I don't imagine this is going to be a very consistent place to get gear, but I imagine that it's going to be vastly improved versus what we have currently, because what we have currently is fucking trash, to say the least, right? So champion rating reset. This is actually awesome. We designed the champion rating to efficiently reflect how you evaluate a particular champion's performance in different game modes to maintain the relevance and accuracy of this parameter, especially in light of the new edition of the regular edition of new champions, rebalances of the existing ones, and in-game meta shifts. We're applying the champion's rating reset in the 10.10 update. So please walk through your champions once again when you have a chance. This up-to-date information will be invaluable for all players. I don't like this. I actually don't think that this is a good change, and I'm sure some people will fight me on this, but the reason I don't think it's a good change is because those ratings are there for a reason, right? You should essentially incentivize players to go back and post a more up-to-date rating as opposed to just resetting all of the ratings, right? So for example, let's say that I had rated, Skull Lord Vargal, right? Let's say I had rated him a 1 everywhere. Why not make it so that if I go back and give a new update that's more up-to-date, especially after his balance, why can't I get 10 gems for that? Why can't I get 50,000 silver for that, right? Something small, but something impactful for your account that says, hey, this rating's been updated. This is more an accurate reflection of how the champion actually performs. It seems like they're focusing on saying, hey, you got to do all this work again, but this also sets a precedent where we could now be expecting resets more often to the champion ratings, which I don't think is exactly fair, because that doesn't... resetting it doesn't give an accurate representation of the champion still, right? Essentially is what I'm getting at. So it's going to be a little bit more accurate, certainly, than some of the champions are currently, but at the end of the day, if the champion's been rated poorly in the past, there's probably a reason for it, and resetting that could negatively affect what people choose to invest in, essentially, is a long-winded way to say it. That being said, you could also argue that, hey, like 10,000 players rated this champion like 1 star back in the day. Those players don't play the game anymore. We need something to change it out, right? So I definitely get both sides of the argument. I think there was a better way to do this, but overall I do think it's a good change. Just for clarification, I am happy that they are doing that, essentially. I'm not going to go through the balance updates because there's been a lot of YouTubers making videos about this in depth, right? However, a couple things to mention here. So Lethal Dose and Incinerate, previously arena-specific blessings, will now also work inside siege battles. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic. Berserk is going to be added to the list of debuffs that bosses are immune to by default. And some Doom Tower stages will be rebalanced due to the upcoming changes to Skull Lord Vargal. So this is absolutely fantastic because he's not going to be really overpowered when you're trying to fight Scarab King, for example. So that's nice. Skull Lord is getting a bit of a rework here where he's going to be a lot more of a powerful champion. I'll leave this on the screen here for like 2 seconds. If you haven't seen it yet, you can read through it. Same thing with Tremaria. You can go ahead and read through this. I'm not particularly interested in either of these rebalances because 1, I don't have the champions, and 2, I just don't really care, in all honesty. These seem like decent rebalances, but even if I pull the champion, I highly doubt that I'm going to be using them anywhere inside the game, so I'm not too worried about it. Moving on to what is now undoubtedly the most broken set of champions that we have seen ever added inside Raid Shadow Legends, and they're adding a Epic Void that is also falling into that category. This is Dawn Caller Sabbatha, which is a very cool looking champion already. It's an Epic Void support from the Knight's Revenant. A1 attacks one enemy, heals the ally with the lowest HP by 10% of this champion's max HP. If this champion has good base HP, that could be a pretty chunky heal. A2 places an increased defense and increased attack on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. That is absolutely fantastic, right? You're setting up your defensive nukers, you're setting up your attack-based nukers, and you're just giving everybody more survivability, which combined with the heal on the A1 is going to make your team so much more tanky, and having that on a 3-turn cooldown is insane. And then finally, Shimmer of Life. This is where things get ridiculous. Revives an ally with 25% HP and 100% turn meter. Now, that's not to be confused with somebody like Cardinal, where she revives them and boosts their turn meter to the max. So that champion still can get cut in on. However, she's also going to place I think that's a she at least, is going to place a block damage buff on that ally for 2 turns, and this is so good. And a lot of people seem to miss what this is going to be so good for. And I'll give you a second to guess it down in the comments. Chimera. This is going to be absolutely insane for Chimera because you're bringing increased defense and increased attack to set your champions up. You're bringing heals. You're bringing a revive with turn meter, HP, and block damage. And why that's so important is because it's going to allow you to basically bash into the ram form with your enemy max HP nukers, right? So for example, a Newt, and a Crixia, a Marius, you revive with this champion. They have block damage for 2 turns. They're going to be able to use their big money abilities against the ram form. So this champion can single-handedly take the period right now where it's the ram form where you're like, oh, I guess you gotta wait for the next form to come out because, you know, I can't do any damage against this fucking Chimera right now. This champion is going to be able to say, hey, you can now do damage against this form, and there is nothing that it can do back to you, right? So this is going to be absolutely fantastic, especially if this champion has very good base stats. Being Void Affinity means that they can come in basically any, affinity matchup. I would argue that for support champions, obviously you want to have an affinity champion. So Force, Magic, and Spirit support champions are going to be infinitely better than a Void support champion. And the reason for that is obviously Void support champions cannot be weak hit, right? So it's a bit of a downside there. You want your damage dealers to be Void. Generally, you want your support champions to be affinitied, which, it is what it is. This is still going to be an incredibly strong champion. Rising Fate passive, whenever this champion revives an ally, decreases the cooldowns of one of this champion's skills by 1 turn. I don't know if this can proc on the revive, but it's going to proc. If it can't proc on the revive, it's going to be guaranteed that you constantly have increased defense and increased attack up as long as you're reviving somebody, right? That's so strong. And finally, the aura increases ally HP in all battles by 25%. HP increasing auras are not incredibly common, especially in all battles, by 25%. That is very, very juicy. And next up, we have who is, without a doubt, the most ridiculously overpowered champion that has ever been added to the game to this date, and it is without question. It doesn't matter what the multipliers are. It does not. It does not matter what the multipliers on this champion are. He can do some damage, right? This guy is just absolutely ridiculously broken, okay? So it's a legendary force champion, defense base from the Knights Revenant. Lasan Claith, or however you'd say that. I don't know. Somebody tell me down below. We have an Athropic Axxe with the A1, 100% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns. This debuff cannot be resisted if the target has attacked this champion before this turn. Already insane. This guy is very much based around, if you've hit me, I'm going to fuck you up, is what his kit is essentially. And so he's going to be very strong against a lot of the AoE nukers, like a Narcissus, for example. Obviously Harima, any sort of like a Sun Wukong's A3. Anybody who's doing AoE damage against this guy is going to have a very bad experience. A2, Spirit Calculus. This is where it gets absolutely ridiculous. 7-turn cooldown books to a 5. The HP levels of all allies will be brought up to the highest level of the ally with the highest HP. I don't know why I said it like that. That's not what it says, but whatever. The turn meter levels of all allies will be brought up to the level of the ally with the highest turn meter. This is ridiculous. I don't think a lot of people will realize how good this is on its own. So if you have Ultimate Death Knight who's at 100% HP because he's in Stone Skin, this guy gets his turn and says, hey, Ultimate Death Knight is at 100% HP. This guy over here is at like 2% HP. I don't care. I'm healing him to full. It's over. It's done, right? It's a full heal, essentially, right? So it's a heal to whoever's at the highest HP. And with the prevalence of Stone Skin in today's meta, there's a very good chance that it's going to be a high HP percentage. Same thing with the turn meter. If this guy's going second and somebody's ready to go right behind him, you can essentially have whoever went first get like full turn meter back. This guy can probably boost his own turn meter as well. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is where it gets even more insane though. So the HP levels of all enemies will be brought down to the level of the enemy with the lowest HP. Not only that, the turn meter levels of all enemies will be brought down to the level of the enemy with the lowest turn meter. Let's think about this for a second, right? Let's say you're going against an enemy team that has a Leorius. Let's say he procs his passive where he gets the unkillable and stays alive on like 1 HP, right? You're going to bring the entire enemy team down to the 1 HP that the Leorius is at. That means that you can effectively tickle their taint with a toothbrush and they're going to just fall over, right? I don't know if this is going to ignore things like Stone Skin because it would be even more busted if it would. And he's an ally, or he's an affinity, god damn it, he's a unity champion for the Knights Revenant, right? But this isn't even his unity kit. This isn't even where he's the strongest, I would say. Then he's also going to place a taunt buff on himself for 2 turns, which is even more ridiculous. Let's take a look at his unity section. Attacks 1 enemy before attacking, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target, and heals him by 10% of his max HP. Heals an additional 10% of his max HP for each debuff transfer. This is insane, right? You transfer 5 debuffs, you transfer 1 debuff. That's 50 or 10% heal on its own, right? That's so incredibly strong for keeping him alive. You pair that with like an immortal set or something like that, this guy's not going to die, right? We'll always use this skill instead of the default skill when counter-attacking. This is so strong as well. Why? Because he can be a potential Armand's counter to some extent. And the reason for that being is our masteries, where when an ally gets a stun or a CC ability, there's a chance to counterattack, or when an ally is critical hit, there's a chance to counterattack. This guy's always going to use his A3 finality disc with the counterattack, right? So he's always going to cleanse himself, and it doesn't matter if he has turn meter or not. So let's say Armand's does his AoE, right? He steals the turn meter. He plays a little guitar, steals the turn meter. He places a stun on an ally. If this guy procs his counterattack, it doesn't matter if he's been stunned. He's going to transfer all the debuffs back to Armand's from him, obviously, right? So transfer the stun back and then just go and smack Armand's. So if they don't have a UDK or something like that, Armand's is probably dead. That's so strong, right? Like, it's so incredibly strong. You build him with retaliation or avenging. It's also incredibly strong, right? And that's not even, again, the unity part of his kit. So one faction ally, before attacking, removes all buffs from the target enemy. This effect cannot be resisted if the target has attacked his champion before this turn. So, for example, again, Armand's does his AoE. That is attacking this champion. I've sometimes seen Armand's that are run in Stone Skin to counter them being countered by my team, essentially, which is the Ancora, Taurus, and Marichka. This guy's going to go in and basically just steal that Stone Skin. If it works as it should by the wording, it's going to be an irresistible Stone Skin steal. It's probably not going to be, though. We've seen this before, right? Absolutely insane. Two faction allies will attack all remaining enemies with less than 30% HP. This attack will ignore 100% of each target's defense and cannot be critical. So he attacks all remaining enemies with less than 30% HP. So he attacks somebody. If there's anybody else alive who has less than 30% HP, he's going to do an insane amount of damage to them. Why is this important? Well, if you get somebody low, and again, if you proc the Swift Parry or something like that, when on his A2, he comes in, he's just going to tap everybody on his own, right? Three faction allies, this skill deals 100% more damage to enemies who attack the champion before this turn. This is insane. He's got so much damage, right? That damage multiplication is going to go off even on his ally attacks, his counter attacks, right? Like, it's so strong. Not ally attacks, sorry, just counter attacks. And finally, he has a passive. Each time this champion loses 25% HP or more from a single hit, places a block damage buff on this champion for one turn. You know what's really fucking annoying is when you're going through wave-based content in the game, and you come back 30 minutes later and you can't beat it because you kept dropping turn meter on some sick fuck on the enemy team that has like block damage or unkillable. That's what this guy is going to be in your arena matches from now on, people. I hope you are excited to fight that, because I am not, surprisingly. Knight's Revenant Unity, one faction ally when attacked has a 15% chance of placing a True Fear on the attacker for one turn. This debuff cannot be resisted. Good luck. He's going to be unkillable with his block damage. You don't want to hit him because he's going to do more damage to you. And you can't really CC him because he has a chance to just send it all back to you. Amazing. Two faction allies. Ignore defense effects against this champion are decreased by 100%. It's hard to overstate how ridiculous this is. Harima is known to be one of the best champions in the entire game for use in the arena because of her effect, which she reduces the ignore defense by 50%. This guy just straight up is twice as strong as Harima. Just casually, just twice as strong. The only caveat is obviously it's against him, where hers is the entire team. This is still incredibly strong, though. If you take a Sun Wukong, you put him in Savage, you get a Helm Smasher proc, and then you have him in like Cruel or something like that, and you're using his A2. He's doing true damage with 100% defense ignore. This guy says, hey, screw you. You're not ignoring any of my defense. This is so incredibly strong. And finally, three faction allies, when attacked, has a 20% chance of activating an instant turn effect on this champion. Occurs once per skill. Increases ally defense in all battles by 25% and increases ally resistance in all battles by 60%. Only applies to Knight's Revenant. Now let me clarify that we have some of the strongest arena champions currently inside the entire game, inside the Knight's Revenant faction. We have Ancora, we have Narcissus, we have Crixia. What else do we have? There's like a lot of insane champions in there. There's another mythical everybody's going to get, right? Embryo or whatever his name is. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. Let's just break down his kit real quick again. He is a champion that you can't one-shot. You can only do like a quarter of his max HP in like one go because he's going to place the damage, block damage on himself. You don't want to hit him because if you hit him, he basically powers himself up. You don't want to not hit him because then he can also counterattack, like, you know, or whatever. So what I mean by that is if you're true fearing like somebody else on the team or something like that, he's going to potentially counterattack you with the masteries like I mentioned. If you decide to hit him, not only is he going to place the block damage, he has a chance of granting an instant turn on himself. He has a chance of placing a true fear on you. And then also, you know, you have no ignore defense against this guy, so he's going to be ridiculously fucking tanky. And I can't wait to fight this guy paired with like a Necrit or something like that. That is going to be incredibly fun. This is like insane, in my opinion. This is without a doubt the most broken champion that we have had released into the game, and that might even be considering the mythicals that we have in the game, because mythicals are affinity based, right? They can weak hit. You can have stone skin on your team, you can have block damage, whatever, right? This guy doesn't care about that. The majority of his damage is going to be coming from his A2, which is just going to be straight up, you know, I do this effect, you have no HP left as long as somebody's low HP on the enemy team, as well as a potentially full turn meter depletion, depending on, you know, if they had a chance to go or not, which this guy is going to be a very solid go second champion. This is ridiculous. This is just absolutely insane. I would like to hear your guys' thoughts down below on this. If I get this champion, he's going to be one of the best champions released to the game. If I don't get him, he's absolutely trash, and I wish they didn't add him. That's my theory on it. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time.